Hey yo, I'm Miss Linnea Lark, and I'm finally back from my month-long corona fog / motivation vacation. But I'm back now. Today I'm going to teach you how to throw a pitcher with an added spout and pulled handle. Up first, you gotta throw a pot. Your pot shape should be some variation of a cylinder with a bulbous belly. That way you can fit lots of liquid inside. So I'm gonna go ahead and throw a largish cylinder. Once I get the walls thin and even and as tall as I can, I pop out that belly by applying pressure from the inside into my soft curved rubber rib. A soft rib is best for a round form because it can easily bend into the same round contour, allowing me to keep my walls smooth without excess unwanted ridges. Now, because I plan to add a hand-built spout, I keep a tallish, straight neck without a defined lip or flare at the top. I do some cleanup by smoothing and compressing my walls and making sure my bottom is dry so it doesn't disintegrate or crack. And then I cut it off that wheel. I would normally use my hands to move this pot onto the board, however the walls are pretty thin, so I choose to use my pot lifts. Side note, pot lifts are a great tool if you don't have a bat system, but they can make a ridge on the base of your pot that can make trimming a little bit more difficult. Alright, now that I'm leather hard, I can trim. For help with centering a leather hard pot, check out the video link in my slip drip tutorial above on the top right corner. For trimming a pitcher's foot, you kind of want a wideish foot. This will allow more stability as you fill your pitcher full of heavy water. For this foot, I want to challenge you to create a foot that is visible from the side view. To do that, I start by using my handy bamboo trimming tool with teeth. I love this tool, it's my favorite tool in my toolbox. Then I draw a circle on the base that will be the outside widest edge of my foot, and then drop it down to make the outside transition from belly to foot crisp and specific. Notice how you can see where the belly ends and the foot begins. That's your challenge. Now, before you make a foot that's way too deep, remember that a well-crafted foot's inside and outside depth should be about the same. So be sure to tap on the base of your pot, eyeball it, or even feel how deep your clay is at the base before you start trimming a super deep foot, forcing you to cut through the base completely, or to have an unbalanced foot. Once I've got a clearly defined foot on the outside, I draw another circle for the inside edge of the foot. I usually try to start with a wider foot than I want, compensating for trimming mistakes that I'm usually sure will come. Just leave a little room for error. Then I start to trim down the inside of that foot. I know it's a nerve-wracking thing, the idea of cutting through the base of your pot. However, you need to make sure that you're trimming your foot deep enough that you can glaze this area. If you don't trim it deep enough, the glaze will end up sticking the base of the pot to the kiln shelf. No bueno. Also remember that trimming will lighten your pot up a lot, making it more lightweight and functional for use. Also notice that I'm carefully trimming a rounded base that mirrors the inside contour of my pitcher. If I had thrown a flat inside base, I would be trimming a flat outside base. So since my inside floor is rounded, my outside floor should be rounded as well. Some last touch-ups with my rivet tool and rubber rib, and I'm good to go. Time to make a slab spout. When choosing a thickness to roll out your slab, you want your slab a wee bit thicker than your pitcher's wall at this point, because your pitcher's wall is already set up to leather hard. Once I've got a slab, I find something round to use as a cookie cutter. In fact, I made a few spouts in case I mess one up. And it's a good thing I did, because guess what I did to the first one? I messed that puppy up. Now I'll set my circular clay aside to stiffen up a wee bit. You want them leather hard, but like wet leather hard. Wet enough that you can handle and bend them without cracks, but stiff enough that they can keep their shape without deflating. After I clean up the edges of the spout, I bend it into the form I want it to take, and then line it up with the contour of the pot to see if and how much of the spout I'll need to trim away to work on my pot's form. I'm careful to make sure that the outer edge or tip of my spout is at least as high as the rim of my pot, you will only be able to fill the pitcher as full as the lowest edge. So if my spout is lower than the rim of my pot, I will not be able to fill my pitcher up all the way. It would just drip out the spout while sitting in place on the table. Rookie mistake. Once I've got it where I kind of want it, I notice that the bottom of my circular spout is too low. It's cutting into the belly area, and I'm not vibing with that look. So I use something round, a bowl in this case, to cut off a little bit of the bottom. Once I like the base where it will attach, I notice that the top is also a little bit too tall. So I use that same bowl to cut a wee bit of the top away. And now my spout, if I were to flatten it out, looks more like the shape of an eyeball. Football, like a really round football. And I like how that looks. So once I get it where I want it, I trace where the spout will attach to the pitcher, and I score slip score both sides, and then firmly yet gently press them into each other. I then clean up all the mess and ridges around the attachment. Alright, now that my sturdy spout is firmly attached to my pot, I gotta cut out the area the spout is blocked by the neck. I use an X-Acto blade to carefully cut it away. Remember when cutting that it's best to cut too little than too much. Take it slow. If you cut a little too much, you can just patch it by slipping and scoring a little bit extra clay in there. Now that I've cut away the division, I can use a trimming tool with teeth to round and smooth out the transition from wall to spout. And then I do cleanups with a rib and sponge. Time to pull my handle. I like to pull my handle after I finish my spout so I can visually balance out the spout with the handle. When new to handle pulling, here are a few of my tips that I give beginners. Number 1, start with more clay than you'll need. Don't be ridiculous, but you want a little extra clay in case you need to cut your losses and pinch a wrecked piece off and start again. Tip number 2, slab your clay into a long block cone shape before starting to pull. This will help get you started and help your pulling rhythm to be long and graceful like the handle you're trying to create. Tip number 3, dunk your whole hand into water every pull or two. You can never have too much water. Water is going to allow the pulling rhythm to glide without friction. And remember, whenever there's friction, there's lumpy, ugly handles. Tip number 4, when pulling, pull all the way through the end of your handle, or else you'll end up with a lump at the bottom that will cause ripping and ridges. Tip number 5, rotate your handle often while pulling, applying even pressure on both sides of your handle. This will help your handle look more symmetrical. Notice that if you pull on one side for a long time, that your handle is thicker on one side than the other because of the shape of your hand while you're pulling. So by rotating it, you'll even that out. Number 6, compare your handle to your pitcher to be sure that your handle's proportions jive with your pot. The biggest mistakes I see for beginner handles are handles that are too thick and heavy. They're clunky. They just add weight. Handles that are not ergonomic and look better suited for mini raccoon hands than human hands. Remember, it'd be nice to be able to fit more than your pinky finger inside of your handle. When I'm done with my handle, I press the large base of the clay onto my board in such a way and angle that my handle hangs down to the board in an ear-shaped way. This way your handle will set up in a curved, graceful arch instead of lying flat. This will hopefully allow for less cracking later. When attaching your handle, remember you'll be fighting gravity, so don't be hasty. If you're in one of my classes, I recommend that you pull handles at the very beginning of class so it can set up and be attached inside of the 80-minute period. But just remember that handles are thin, and if they're set up in this round shape, there will be air all around them. So they're gonna dry even faster than normal. Once my handle is stiff enough to hold its shape but still wet enough to be pliable without cracking, I hold it up to my pitcher's form. I cut the top of the handle at the angle to where the handle will be raised upward in a roundish way that will hopefully mirror the rounded belly of the pot, creating a repetition in harmony, resulting in a visually balanced pitcher. Once I think it looks right, I mark where the top will attach and then score it on by pressing firmly. And I do the same thing at the base of the handle. While I clean up my construction, I create a support for my handle. I leave the support all night while it sets up and battles gravity. The next day, all my added parts are firm and set up, so I carve my name at the base. And there you have it, my bisque-fired pitcher with an added spout. I hope this tutorial was helpful for you. For those of you without a home clay studio, my heart goes out to you. Don't worry, we'll get through this and clay again soon. And in the meantime, subscribe to my channel to see more tutorials. Happy day, my babies. I love and I miss you all.